morning, everybody. Welcome to Azure Flash News. It is July 12th. Today's the 12th?
It's the 12th.
Right on, July 12th. We have a new cast member with Azure Flash News today. This is, I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Scott Rutz. I'm another cloud solution architect here at Microsoft in Edina, and been focused on app dev with our customers.
And so for those of you who are not familiar with the great state of Minnesota, Edina is in the Twin Cities area.
It is.
We always say Minneapolis. Yeah, no, it's exciting to have Scott on board, have another set of eyes and another set of experiences, and as a customer as well as an Azure architect. So it's awesome. We're excited to have you around.
It's been great.
Yeah, good. So we've got some, I'll say a select number of announcements today.
Mm-hmm.
Some really good announcements. I think what's happening, what you're seeing is with the, I can't remember, I always confuse Ignite and Inspire. I always confuse the two, but with the partner conference coming up, we've got some specific announcements around partner integration, partner collaboration, partner resource management, which is exciting. And then what I thought we would do is maybe hop off script a little bit and go over some Signal R stuff that I've been looking at for the last couple, I guess, days, weeks, months, however long you want to put it. But anyway, so we can get started. We got some good stuff today. So a small set of announcements today. So the first one is Azure Data Share. Okay. So I think you kind of framed up a really good example without naming names.
Yeah.
Just kind of talk about the example that you set up or the challenge that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the past, if you had some content that you were providing to your customer base, okay, you would need to come up with a custom way of sharing that, right? Either by putting it out in FTP or creating some APIs and having an entitlement system, and then your customers would actually need to learn those APIs. Yep. You'd have to monitor those APIs, and that's the way it used to work in the past. But now with this, right, you can just expose your content in a cloud native way.
That's
using the actual Azure services that your customers are building on.
So first and foremost, raise your hand if you don't want to be in the business of doing entitlements and APIs and FTP and all the other stuff, right? That's pretty much everybody out there.
Yeah,
right?
It's a lot of work.
But to your point, we are at a point, we've hit an inflection point a long time ago where data collaboration, data sharing is tantamount to innovation. Because the world revolves around data, let's be honest, right? Can't have apps without data, and without apps, data really.
Yeah, and now as apps are getting more intelligent, right? With machine learning, more and more data is actually, driving how an app behaves and what you see.
And the insights you get from it, the innovation that comes from it, the trends, the patterns, all the stuff that you see. So basically, what we're doing today is we're announcing a preview of a product or a service called Azure Data Share. Okay, so Azure Data Share basically provides you capabilities to share your data out of, currently it looks like we've got, out of the gate, we're supporting two storage solutions, Azure Data Storage or Azure Blob Storage and Azure Data Lake Storage, okay? So what it does is essentially we are simplifying the world of data sharing, okay? So you can see in this particular example, this is Contoso Marketplace, and they've got, this is around clearly data, right? So you can see up on the top, we've got details, data sets, shares, subscriptions, invitations, and history. And what they're doing is they're providing access to these shares, if you will. And you can see in this case, you've got 2 pending and 2 accepted. You're basically granting access to external entities to basically collaborate and share that information, okay? So super simplified to access and to share the data across organizations and across industries, right? So you're not relegated necessarily to like a B2B scenario where you're federated with somebody else's Azure Active Directory. You can do it in-house, of course, right? I might be the owner of a specific set of content that I've been heavily curating and kind of massaging and classifying and doing all this stuff. I may want to just actually share that internally in a secure, reliable, collaborative way. But I also may want to revoke access at any given time. Let's say, for example, I find out that somebody's account internally has been compromised. I want to revoke access to that data immediately. So I want to basically check that box, basically delete the recipient, and that person can no longer have access to this data share anymore.
Right.
So super, super cool. You can see sent shares, received shares. So this obviously is your portal for collaboration as well. So if somebody's sharing information with you, you can go in and you can actually go into your received data shares and see those data sets that you've got available and look across that information. So This is really, really important, I think, in regards to, again, like how do you reliably share it without creating a copy of it?
Yep.
You know, you're not FTPing information around, you're not, to your point, you're not creating a set of entitlements, or you're not creating this elaborate structure around APIs, and then
Yeah.
having to support those APIs, and then worrying about how much data throughput you can have on those APIs.
Exactly.
Super, super, I think, important in the space of data collaboration.
It's a fun theme to see, you know, how the cloud's evolving now to really start to help solve the problem of collaborating with your partners, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
reducing the friction there.
And that's a great.
It's going to make it easier.
Yes, without a doubt. And I think you raised that term, partners, right? I
Yeah.
think for our partners, whether you're working with customers or whether you're collaborating with other partners, this is a great and easy way to collaborate. So you think about some of the journeys that Microsoft has been on with Red Hat, most recently the announcement with Oracle. All those collaborations, all those relationships, there is a fair amount of data that's being shared between, whether it's source code, whether it's actual contracts, but then you just have data, right? There might be insights, utilization insights. There might be data surrounding just metrics, log metrics, that kind of stuff, right? And you don't want to share it with the world, but you do want to share it with that partner. Right. So here's a great, easy way where we can collaborate and say, okay, just in terms of, for example, let's say in our situation where we're working with Oracle, we're seeing an uptick in utilization where people are provisioning the connection with ExpressRoute and OCI. We may have to make sure, like, for resource planning, right? So we want to make sure physically we've got the resources available as we see more and more adoption to service. And here's the data we're looking at. Oracle, do you confirm? Oh yeah, we're seeing the same thing.
Right.
So I can just think of, clearly those are just some very rudimentary examples. You can also think about experiment results, right? You can think about financial data, healthcare data, but you want to share it in a secure, reliable way. So yeah, really cool new product offering. So this is the announcing the preview. So this is a preview of DataShare. I'm not sure specifically, I didn't see a call out as to what regions this was going to be initially available in for the preview. But because it's based on pre-existing services, my guess is it won't be a big effort for us to deploy this into the outer rings of Azure. And so if you're interested,
and with
go ahead.
Previews, there's a chance to provide feedback too. So
yes,
if you're
course,
excited about it,
exactly,
and you can think of some use cases that maybe aren't initially supported.
That's a great point. For example, nested hierarchical, maybe share structures or ACLs around certain things.
Just the beginning.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. So Azure Data Share, go take a look at it. Definitely worth again providing feedback, but also if you're in a situation where you need to simply and safely share your data, this looks like it's going to be a great solution, great option for you. Very cool. Awesome. So again, in that theme, right, there's a theme here as I was looking at some of the content. Now the third example isn't necessarily theme based, but again, with the Big I conference coming up for partners, we've got another capability. So we've seen in the past, it can be very challenging to manage your cloud deployments for customers at scale, right? So if I'm a partner or an SI and a software integrator, and I let's say I've got a die cut and a die stamp and provision resources, right? Well, how do you manage all that at scale, right? Huge challenge. So you've got to have, let's say, for example, if I'm provisioning stuff into somebody else's subscription, I've got to have access tokens for storage, and I've got to have, access at the AD level. I've got to have all these things in place in order to
And you want to be able to monitor and help from a service perspective.
So think about that. If I've got 100 customers, the likelihood of me having a single pane of glass, I've got probably 100 panes of glass.
You're
right?
behind the scenes, you're probably trying to write some code that's aggregating that, and it's a lot of work.
Exactly, a lot of work, exactly. And so I can't name names, unfortunately, but a customer that I'm working with right now has this exact scenario, right? They've got an IaaS-based deploy. Well, they've got different flavors, and you know the customer quite well. Different flavors of deployments. Some of it being PaaS, some of it being IaaS, some of it being maybe even on-prem. There's an on-prem component, but imagine having hundreds of customers, if not thousands of customers, where you've got to go out and manage and monitor, but in their environment. So even though they say we have an on-premises offering, that to the customer that could mean in their cloud deployment, in their Azure tenant, right? On-premises no longer means physically in a data center that you house, down the block. So introducing Azure Lighthouse is a great way for ISVs, for partners, for Microsoft, for even internally to actually I'm not going to use the word project into because that's not the appropriate term, but have actually, we're calling it, what are we using the term here? It's distributed, not distributed, delegated resource management. So you can have actually, you can be delegated access into somebody else's subscription using RBAC and all the standard technologies that we've already got in place, where you can actually not just manage and monitor those capabilities on behalf of your customer, but you can actually, through a single pane of glass now, you can see what's going on. So
it's nice as the customer actually owns that infrastructure.
Exactly. So the customer owns, you're spot on. The customer owns the infrastructure, owns the subscription. It doesn't matter if it's pay as you go. It doesn't matter if it's an enterprise subscription. But to your point, customer owns it.
Right.
Exactly. And by doing that now, instead of having to, so one of the interesting things I came across was, so let's say each deployment you have is, say, 100 VMs, right? And let's say you've got 100 customers. That's a lot of VMs, right?
Yeah.
And you'd basically have to cycle through for each customer. I've got to go get, my access tokens. I've got to authenticate. I've got to make these API calls, all this other stuff. Well, with Azure Lighthouse, you can see all those deployments across one pane of glass, one view of glass, right? So if you're monitoring, if you're getting alerting, or if you're updating all that stuff, you're going to be able to do that at scale without having to do, jump into that tenant, jump out, jump into that tenant, jump out. So it's kind of again, I don't like the term projecting because that's not exactly what it is, but I would say maybe it projects insights and telemetry back into your capability.
Right.
Is a good way to do it. So this is a new service. So we are introducing Azure Lighthouse. We've had it in private preview for a while, and we've been working with some customers. For example, Sentia is a customer that we've been working with. You can see Mark Rusinovich, actually, this particular blog post that we've got highlighted, it wasn't by Mark, but I think we're excited enough about it where you're seeing all the way up to the level of Mark Rusinovich, they're excited about it, right? So he actually has his own blog post where he goes real deep under the hood of Azure Lighthouse, how we do it, and it's all about security, right? So me getting on my security soapbox that I like to get on every once in a while, right? A lot of the technologies that we've built in-house, for example, Microsoft Drawbridge, right? How you isolate and how you separate these capabilities and technologies is so critical to maintaining or avoiding data bleed and as side channel execution attacks and escalation of privileges and all these other things that just if you're not doing that, you should not be in the cloud, right?
Right.
So in addition to that, though, once we've kind of nailed that, once we've gotten that figured out, now you can start doing cool stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
Once you've solved and continue to solve, right? Because it's not one and done with security. Doug Splinter, just ask Doug Splinter, he'll tell you, security is never one and done. It's an ongoing process. But because we've got a good handle on it, now we can actually surface ourselves up on the top of the stack and say, okay, now that we've solved these foundational challenges, what can we do? Sharing and collaboration and these other things.
If you're a product development team now, I mean, I think this creates some new opportunities in maybe the way you interface with your customer. And like you said, you can do this with less administration and securely. So I think there's options there.
And you actually just raised a really good point too. When you think about the customer, right? Think about the customers, for example, their security team. This is something I think that's going to provide them a level of comfort knowing that, look, these guys aren't coming into our subscription with admin access. And they're not jumping in with full access to everything, and because these resources may even be provisioned into a resource group that they have other stuff in. Right. So from a security perspective, I'm going to feel a lot better knowing that I can actually use something like Azure Lighthouse to give them access just to the services that they need to manage, monitor, and maintain. So least privilege access, which is critical, right? And in a reliable, safe, secure way by using RBAC, by using Azure Active Directory, by using policy, for governance and all that stuff. All those things that we've built, you're starting to see us now snap them together in meaningful ways, not just providing you the building blocks, but us actually leveraging it as well.
Right.
Yeah, really, really cool. But definitely go check this out. Yep, if you're in the business at all of having to manage, monitor, maintain, deploy all that stuff within the context of, say, a partner's Azure instance or tenant, this is gonna be a must-have, right? To manage that stuff at scale. So, uber critical. Uber. That's a lot of Ubers. I wonder how much I'd pay for that if there was an Uber. What do they call that? What's it called when there's an Uber? Not rush, but I forget what it's called. They have those things where the prices go up.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a lot of Ubers. So very cool. Azure Lighthouse, definitely worth checking out. So I mean, these two announcements alone got me out of bed this morning and got me excited about Azure Flash News, right? So just that in and of itself, if you're a partner, really cool. But then I kind of introduced this third capability. So Azure Firewall, it's not new, right? It's been around now for a while, not a ton of time. But a firewall basically is not a wall that's on fire, right? I mean, in simplest terms, a firewall is...
It just lets you control who's, coming in and out.
Exactly, right? So think about like a fire door in a hotel. It's going to provide security and safety for a certain amount of time. Like for if there's a fire in the hallway of the hotel, you're in the hotel room, that door needs to be fireproof to a certain point or whatever. Yeah. This is that same principle, right? You're basically providing a blockade against environmental, in this case, I'll call them environmental issues, but for example, denial of service attacks, right? SQL injection attacks, a whole bunch of different things, right? So these firewalls get put in front of your assets, in front of your resources to protect you, okay? I'm probably not telling you something you don't already know. If you're in tech.
Yeah, but what's cool about this, what excites me is the fact that, like you said, the service has been out there, but it just continues to improve. And I think when you see with this release, this is just continued polish on these
Oh,
services.
absolutely. So, and I think back to your earlier point, when you were saying, go out, provide feedback, right? We're always listening, and I think, we can't say that enough on Azure Flash News. These engineering teams are listening. They are accepting feedback. They are accepting, praise as much as they are accepting criticism and concern, right? So obviously these products continue to evolve, and in this case, there's a couple capabilities that are coming up in this that are preview. So we've got a general availability service with a set of general availability capabilities, and then now in preview we have multiple IP addresses will soon be GA, right? So instead of just having one IP address associated with that Azure firewall, you'll be able to associate multiple public IPs, and that can be important for a couple different reasons. For example, you may have IP addresses, so you may have different URLs coming in, and you want to do IP traffic, what's it called? Not splitting, but traffic redirects and some other things based on the IP address. There's a couple other reasons why you'd want to do that, but so multiple public IPs coming soon. Availability zones is now in GA, right? So for Azure firewalls, you can put this into an availability zone, just like you can with Azure virtual machines. And that's going to give you a significant uptick in high availability, right? Because you're not just spanning update domains and fault domains, you're now spanning availability zones within a region as well.
More resiliency there.
Exactly. Wow, see? I could have said that in so many fewer words. More resiliency, done. SQL FQ, so fully qualified domain names, FQDN. So SQL fully qualified domain names, or FQDNs, filtering is now in preview. So for example, you should be able to filter SQL endpoint, right? So a SQL Server, Azure SQL databases, Azure Managed Instance, you'll be able to filter that as well, traffic coming, only allowing traffic into that SQL instance from certain IP addresses, that kind of stuff. Azure HD Insight tagging is now available for FQDNs for Insight. And then last but not least, central management using partner solutions, okay? So central management, yeah, right? There's that theme again, right? That's the theme. So I want to go down to that central management piece one again, because again, we are kind of on this partner theme. But if we scroll down, you can see, so these are some of the big ones, right? So AlgoSec is in preview, Barracuda is GA already, the Tufin is in preview, but so we're not just these are big players. These are trusted players. These are known entities in this space, and being able to manage them through, using these tools. So you can see up here, so AlgoSec Cloudflow, you can manage Azure Firewall and NSGs is now in public preview, right? And there's videos associated with it where you can go and see an overview of how they're doing it and how the tool interacts with it. This one is kind of cool. So Cloud Security Guardian by Barracuda is GA in the Azure Marketplace. It auto deploys and configures the Barracuda Cloud, the cloud generation WAF firewall, or it will do the same thing for Microsoft Azure's firewall as well. So this is where you have flexibility, which is even cooler, right? You don't have to use the Azure firewall. You absolutely can use one or the other. So you may have cases where You've got a well-known configuration. It's been accepted by your security team, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been accepted by your Cloud Center of Excellence as your standard. Boom, go do that.
Yep.
If you do not have a standard in place already, go cloud native.
Right.
Absolutely, right?
Right. So if you're making the move from on-prem and you're used to one of these providers, you can make that migration.
Right on. Very cool. Yeah. So some really good announcements today. Like I said, I kept it scoped to 3 because now let's do something fun. Well, fun's a relative term, right?
It's fun to me.
So Mr. Rutz has an app dev background,
Yeah.
so he's probably
let's build things.
He's probably as nerdily excited about things like SignalR as I am.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you at home who don't know what SignalR is, basically it is the ability to have an open persistent socket for two-way communication.
Right.
I mean, is that the easiest way to describe it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a technical way. I mean, but from the use cases I've seen, what it really enables you to do is it lets the server actually kind of push notifications back up to the client, right?
Exactly.
And it allows you to kind of create asynchronous user interfaces.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some really cool sample applications that are out in GitHub, naturally, right? And in this particular case, so what I'm going to really quickly do is I'm just going to fire this app off, and I don't believe I broke anything between 8:30 and 9:30 this morning, but you never know. So I'm using Visual Studio 2019. I've gone into Azure, into the portal, and I've registered an instance of Azure SignalR. I've created and deployed an instance of SignalR so that I could actually leverage this capability. So you can see here we've got a map of the United States and something that looks very simple, as you can see, airplanes. Okay. So these airplanes are basically this data on the location, the launch, the tail identifier, or the identifier, and the time are all being fed via the SignalR service. Okay, so again, looks super simple, looks pretty straightforward. You can see one joined. So if I grab this URL, so if I grab my localhost port 5000 and I paste another one in here, okay, you're going to see 2 joined. Okay. So real time, it's telling me via SignalR how many clients are connected to the SignalR service that's feeding this information, okay? So again, looks pretty simple, looks pretty straightforward, right? But what's interesting about this is this data is being fed real time to the browser. You notice the page isn't reloading, right? Yep. It's not making like these frequent requests or updates. Right. It's just there.
Yeah, right. In the past, what you would see a long time ago is you'd see the actually browser refresh every 60 seconds.
That little meta tag, HTTP refresh.
And then as things evolved, your JavaScript wizards would have some background AJAX request every 30 seconds, seeing what's changed and refreshing the page. So that just eliminates what you need to code now.
Exactly.
It's just more turnkey to do a more dynamic application like this.
Absolutely. So I'll kill this, and you can see one joined. So automatically it knows how many clients are connected to the system. You can see the planes are still flying. But the secret sauce is the fun stuff, right? The stuff that's happening behind the scene. So the first thing I had to do was I provisioned an instance of the Azure SignalR service up in Azure. Super simple, right? You go in and you say create new Azure SignalR service. It gives you endpoints and all that stuff to talk to, okay? The second thing I had to do was create dummy data. So luckily, as part of the sample application that you can download from GitHub, there is a JavaScript file. Now, it's a JS file, but what I did was I just grabbed it and pasted this function into an index page, okay? And then you can specify these parameters. So the way the JavaScript file was initially written was you would pass them in as params. I just basically hard-coded it. So I took a map of the US and created some left, right, top, and bottom. I did have to actually fix the code, so I may have to do a pull request here. They were calling this top and they were calling this bottom. Well, when you try to do top and bottom, JavaScript apparently thinks those are reserved words, and it was giving me not a number. So the not a number had to be changed, the nan, and so I just changed it to TP and BTM. I don't remember if bottom was breaking it too, but anyway, and there's lots of jokes there I could go into. I won't, but there's jokes. So what I did then was I generated all this flight data. So this is just generic sample data that's in JSON format. So you can see I've got an identifier, the time basically, and this is in milliseconds, I think, back to like whatever, January 1st of 1970, something like that. And then the latitude and longitude. And so this is basically an array of arrays. So you can see I wanted 20 flights, I think, or 20, how many flights did I generate here? 100 flights? Did I go 100? To see if I could still perform at scale. I did go to 100. Wow. Look at that. So 99, 0 to 99. So I went 100 flights, And then, so that's one array of all these 100 flights in one position at a time. Then the second array is that same thing, and with them moving, okay? So that's my data feed, right? So this is using ASP.NET Core. So in the beginning, the first thing you do is you do an add signal R service, right? So the services that are configured for this .NET Core application. I'm not going to scroll you and show you my entire URL because that'll show you my SAS token. But you can see in the constructor of the add signal R, I pass in the connection string. You don't have to do that, but that's what I did, okay? Then in the configure section of the startup, you can see I did map a hub. So the hub is important because that's where you're going to get the information, right? So in this case, I mapped, it's called the flight map hub, and it's basically creating an endpoint called WAC flight data, okay? So if we go look at that hub, the flight map hub, basically we pass in the context of an I flight control, right? And then on the control, there's not a lot going on here, but so you can see on connected async, remember we showed the number of visitors where it said joined 1, joined 2. This is where we were basically updating that universally to say, hey, all clients just go increment this number by 1 or decrement it if they're disconnected, okay? But then there's some interesting things that are happening in this flight control, okay? So if we scroll down here, this flight control, basically we've got this class that's been created, a POCO object to hold each one of these instances, data structure. And then there's a default time interval. But what this is doing is it's mocking up basically going out and grabbing data, okay? So here's my array for my flight data. Here's the context, the iHub context, right? Because that gets passed into the flight control. And then you can see the data URL that I'm using, okay? So super simple, go point to that data.json file. But here's the kicker. So timer.elapsed broadcast flights, okay? So broadcast flights, if we're gonna go to the definition, the current flight index, right? Basically, this is incrementing. It's a static variable that we increment by 1, because remember, it was an array of arrays. So we're saying go to the next level of the array and give me that data. What I could do here is instead of doing this, just moving to the next step in the array, in broadcast flights, if I wanted to make this more real, I could go grab a URL with like a date timestamp.
Right.
So instead of just moving to an array of predefined data, I could say in broadcast
going
URL
to a real service that
go
has
to
the
flight
data.
service.
So every 60 seconds,
Exactly.
I want the latest coordinates, and then
exactly. So very easy to go from dummied up to making it actually really hitting a service like with real data and getting that information. So at that point, then you can see broadcast flights basically. Whoops, got some live data action going on. That's where so the index moves, and now you can see context.clients.all that send async update aircraft. Okay, so context. Remember, we passed in the context of up here. If we go back up, the context is the hub, right? The hub context. And so anybody connected to that hub via signal R is going to basically invoke this update aircraft. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Update aircraft. Let's go take a look for that. So update aircraft really is, whoops, of course it's going to find that, right? It's a JavaScript function, and it's in the map.canvas. So in this case, this is basically what's updating the position of those airplanes on the map in JavaScript, okay? So basically what's happening is this is asynchronously sending down this notification to every client that's connected to the service to go update your airplanes, in a nutshell, right? And of course, we can go look at update aircrafts, and if we go down here, here's add aircrafts, here's where's my update aircrafts? Move, there it is, here's my update aircraft, right? So this it basically adds any new aircrafts, right? It clears all the existing ones, and then it moves them to the new location. Super simple, right? I mean, behind the scenes, if you look at the JavaScript that's doing this, obviously, if you could do it like with just a standard grid of data, right? That's going to be really straightforward, really simple. In this case, because there's a lot of things happening, moving the airplanes around, making that stuff happen, relatively complex.
Yeah.
But easy to track. So trust me, if I can figure out what's going on behind the scenes, you guys can too. I mean, so Signal R, very powerful, right? If you want to get out of the business of doing refreshes, AJAX calls, and get more into the business of really, I think of it more as like it's a pub sub event driven.
Yeah, think about how can we enhance the user experience.
Exactly.
So less code.
Exactly, less code. And that's the cool thing about it is with the Signal R hub, with the SDK, with the framework, with everything you get, you're getting out of the business of writing all these callbacks and these AJAX calls and all this other stuff because it's all wired up for you, okay? It's already there. You provision the service, you download the SDK, whether it's in JavaScript, whether it's in ASP.NET Core, doesn't, whatever. Pick your technology, Java, and you'll have that available to you. So yeah, so in a nutshell, that's what's happening with the SignalR capability. These sample applications are available out on GitHub. If there is a README that's associated with it, you can see here, there is actually a live demo. If you don't want to see mine, there's a live demo in the README file. But so creating a SignalR service, it shows you how to do that. It shows you how to basically do everything. So yeah, so you can go out to GitHub. This is all available for Azure SignalR sample applications. So if you do a simple Bing search on Azure SignalR sample app, you'll go into the docos, which basically has a list of all the sample applications available to get started. And there's a lot of chat applications too, by the way. I'm not sure why that one is kind of universal, but that seems to be kind of the leading candidate for samples in SignalR. So that takes us up to the top of the hour. Hopefully that was educational. Hopefully it was informative. We've got some great new capabilities around partner management, monitoring, integration, deployment, right? Data sharing, all these cool things are available. Definitely recommend go checking them out. And Mr. Rutz, by the way, in case anybody has any questions for you, how can they reach you?
scrutz@microsoft.com.
Wow, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
SC Rutz. Do you have a Twitter handle, by the way?
And Rutzko on Twitter. RUTZSCO. That's my first Unix handle
nice.
on my first job.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Well, it's for a different reason, but because I've done for the first username I had back in college is like Weinbrum, and so for whatever reason I use that as my handle.
It just
in a lot
stuck,
of cases.
right?
Yeah, totally. So anyway, as usual, if you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me at Rick, W-E-Y, @Microsoft.com, as well as you can reach us on our Twitter handle at Azure Flash News. Thank you so much to the MTC, Doug Splinter, and Emily McMiller for making all this happen. Without you guys, we certainly couldn't do this. And of course, thank you to you, the viewers and listeners. Without you guys, really, there's no reason for us to be here.
Right.
And we like to be here, so it's all good. Awesome. Well, happy Friday. And as usual, we look forward to chatting with you same time, same place next week. And of course, until then, keep your fingers on the keyboards and your head in the clouds.